Let's be honest, our world is drowning in noise. Everyone's trying to climb. Everyone's chasing likes, headlines, money, power. But while most are shouting to be seen, few are stepping forward to serve. And that right there is the gap we need to close. Because real leadership, real legacy, and real success, they don't start with ambition. They start with intention. And intention rooted in service. If you want to live a life that means something, that moves, something that matters, you need to understand this: success is not status. Success is service. That's not just an idea, it's a challenge. And if you stay with me to the end of this message, you'll feel it too. The truth is, we've been taught the wrong version of success. It's become a solo act. Me, my goals, my journey. But in reality, success isn't something you achieve alone. It's something you multiply through others. It happens when you lift someone, when you make something better, when your win becomes a door for someone else's beginning. That's service. And the most dangerous lie of our time is that service is secondary. It's not. It's foundational. Every great movement that's reshaped the world, from civil rights to public health, from education reform to climate justice, has been driven by people who served something bigger than themselves. These weren't people who waited for perfect timing or perfect titles. They showed up. They led from the ground, not from a pedestal. Because service is not about being celebrated. It's about being useful. And in a world where selfishness is often rewarded, usefulness becomes revolutionary. Look around. We're in a moment of profound disruption, economically, politically, environmentally. The ground beneath us is shifting. The question is, how are you showing up in the shake up? Because anyone can talk about change, but it takes something deeper to be the change. It takes service, not just one day a year, not just when cameras are rolling, but every day, behind the scenes, when no one is watching. That's when success begins to grow roots. That's when leadership becomes legacy. And let's be clear, service is not weakness. It's not submission. It's not about doing less. It's about doing more with meaning. You don't need to be rich to be generous. You don't need to be famous to be influential. What you need is a decision to use your gifts, your voice, your time for the good of others. That decision changes everything. It changes how you lead, how you build, how you live. There's a myth that power is found in being the loudest voice in the room. It's not. True power is found in listening, in lifting, in leading with empathy. And when you lead with service, you don't just move others, you move systems. You create momentum that lasts beyond your name, your term, your time. That's the kind of success we need right now. One that doesn't leave people behind. One that doesn't just speak change, but actually delivers it. And here's the part no one tells you. Service doesn't just help others, it saves you. It saves you from the trap of ego. It saves you from the emptiness of performance. It grounds you in what's real. The joy, the fulfillment, the peace you're searching for. It's not in climbing higher, it's in digging deeper. Into the work, into the people, into the purpose. That's where the real rewards are. And those rewards, they last. So here's what I'm asking: flip your idea of success. Flip the script. Stop asking, how far can I go? And start asking, who can I bring with me? Stop measuring your life by what you collect and start measuring it by what you contribute. The world doesn't need more stars, it needs more servants. People who are willing to show up, speak up, and stand up, not just for themselves, but for those who can't. Because in the end, no one remembers the titles. No one cares how big your office was. What people remember, what they feel, is how you served, what you gave, how you showed up in times of uncertainty, how you chose to build rather than break, how you used your moment to move something forward. That is success. That is legacy. That is service. We've been conditioned to believe that leadership is about visibility, recognition, and dominance. But true leadership doesn't start when the spotlight hits. It starts when you quietly set your ego aside. Real leadership begins the moment you stop thinking about what you can get and start focusing on what you can give. It's easy to lead when there's applause. It's harder when the only sound is the noise of problems no one wants to face. That's where service steps in. It demands that you show up even when it's inconvenient, even when it's unpopular, even when it costs you something. Because leadership without service is hollow. It's performance dressed as purpose. And we see it everywhere. Leaders who talk about change but never touch the pain, who command rooms but can't connect with people. That's not leadership. That's theater. Service-centered leadership means stepping into spaces others avoid. It means listening more than you speak. It means understanding that your platform is not a throne, it's a table, and everyone should have a seat at it. When you move from self-interest to shared interest, everything shifts. The decisions you make no longer benefit a few. They begin to elevate the many. You stop competing and you start collaborating. You stop managing people and you start empowering them. You stop leading from above and you begin lifting from beside. In that shift, something powerful happens. People trust you, not because they fear you, but because they feel seen by you. They follow you, not because they have to, but because they believe in what you stand for. This is the type of leadership that creates impact, not for a term, but for generations. Because it wasn't built on image, it was built on integrity. Everything we build, our businesses, our careers, our legacies, rises or falls on the foundation we choose. And if that foundation is built on personal gain alone, it may stand for a moment, but it won't stand the test of time. Impact that lasts, influence that matters, and progress that sticks, they are all rooted in one powerful principle: service. You can launch the flashiest idea in the world, make headlines, go viral, build momentum. But if it isn't anchored in serving real people, solving real problems, and healing real pain, it will collapse under its own weight. Service is what gives depth to success. It's what turns achievement into meaning and motion into purpose. We often chase innovation, expansion, and acceleration, faster results, bigger profits, broader reach. But the real question is, are we making it better for anyone else but ourselves? Are we improving lives or just inflating our own status? Are we designing for convenience or are we designing for compassion? Because when service becomes the seed, everything that grows from it becomes stronger, more adaptable, and more trusted. That's sustainability, not just for the environment, but for leadership, systems, culture, and humanity. The greatest change doesn't come from loud disruption. It comes from consistent service, showing up when it's hard, giving when it's costly, building when no one is watching. That kind of service creates a ripple effect. It earns loyalty. It inspires unity. It builds credibility that no brand campaign can buy. That's why the most successful communities, organizations, and leaders are the ones who invest deeply in service first. Because what you plant in service, you harvest in resilience. What you give away in compassion, you receive back in trust. That's not charity, it's strategy. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. In a world driven by numbers, rankings, and quarterly gains, it's easy to believe that profit is the ultimate goal. But when we strip away the noise, the headlines, and the trophies, what remains is the one thing that truly fuels meaningful progress: purpose. Profit can buy influence, attention, even power, but purpose builds movements. Purpose builds connection, and ultimately purpose builds longevity. When your life, your work, or your leadership is anchored in purpose, you create something far more powerful than success. You create substance. You stop asking, how much can I make? And start asking, Why does this matter? People can sense the difference between a leader chasing profit and one living their purpose. One is transactional, the other transformational. When you lead with purpose, you inspire others to believe, to care, and to take part. Your work becomes more than a product, it becomes a mission. Your voice becomes more than noise, it becomes a call. And your efforts no longer feel like effort, they feel like alignment. That alignment makes you resilient. When things go wrong, and they will, your purpose keeps you rooted. It reminds you who you're serving and why you started. Profit can get you attention, but purpose earns you trust. Profit can fill your wallet, but purpose fills your life. The irony is, when you prioritize purpose, profit often follows. Because people invest in what they believe in. They stay loyal to what they trust. They rally around what reflects their values. And when your purpose is to serve, elevate, or heal others, the impact multiplies. It scales not because of strategy alone, but because people feel it. They carry it forward. They become part of it. That's the kind of growth money can't manufacture. That's the kind of success that doesn't expire when the market shifts. Success isn't measured by what you take with you. It's measured by what you leave behind. And what you leave behind isn't written in headlines or stored in bank accounts. It's written in the lives you've touched, the spaces you've healed, and the opportunities you've created for others. That's why your greatest legacy won't be the titles you held or the awards you earned. It will be the community you built, the people you empowered, and the dignity you restored where it had been forgotten. In the end, your community is your true echo. The question isn't, how did I rise? But rather, who rose because I was here? When you invest in your community, you're not just making life better for others. You're creating a force that outlives you. You're building something that continues to grow long after you've left the room. A strong community doesn't happen by accident. It's created intentionally through empathy, through effort, and through the courage to listen and respond. It means showing up not just during the ribbon cuttings or the victories, but when the systems are broken, the wounds are open, and hope is thin. That's where legacy is born, not in perfect conditions, but in imperfect places where your presence makes a difference. Communities thrive when they're seen, heard, and valued. And you become part of something greater when you make the decision to serve more than yourself. When you elevate voices that are too often ignored, when you offer solutions rooted in fairness and compassion, you move beyond influence. You create transformation. People may forget what you built for yourself, but they will never forget how you built for others. They will never forget that you showed up, not to be praised, but to participate in healing, lifting, and restoring what matters most people. Too often, power is mistaken for a prize, something to be won, something to be hoarded. But real power, lasting power, is not a reward you hold. It's a responsibility you carry. It's not about dominance, it's about stewardship. When you are in a position of influence, your job isn't to shine brighter than everyone else. Your job is to make sure the light reaches more people. Leadership is not about sitting at the top of the mountain. It's about clearing a path for others to climb. Power, when used selfishly, creates fear and division. But power, when used with integrity and humility, becomes a force for inclusion, restoration, and forward motion. When you understand that power is a responsibility, you stop leading for applause and start leading for impact. You stop making decisions based on convenience and start making them based on conviction. And in that moment, everything changes. People begin to trust you not because of your title, but because of your truth. They follow you not because they have to, but because they see you serving a vision larger than yourself. Power isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the most accountable. It's about listening, learning, and lifting others into their potential. Because power that isn't shared will eventually collapse. But power that is used to empower becomes unshakable. You don't need to rule over people to lead them. You need to stand with them, speak for them, and fight alongside them when the system silences them. That's leadership that lasts. That's power with purpose. You are not given power to be celebrated. You are given power to be responsible for the spaces you touch and the people you serve. The future doesn't need rulers. It needs servants who lead boldly. There is a kind of emptiness that achievement alone cannot fill. You can reach every milestone, break every record, accumulate the accolades, and still feel a void echoing through your days. That's because fulfillment doesn't come from personal gain. It comes from meaningful contribution. When you begin to serve others, not for applause, not for optics, but out of genuine compassion, you start to experience something far deeper than success. You experience healing, clarity, peace. Because in serving others, you're not just lifting them. You're also anchoring yourself to something greater than ego. You're reconnecting with your own humanity. We live in a culture that tells us the answer is always more. More wealth, more followers, more recognition. But when you serve, you discover that less of you is actually more. Less pride, more humility. Less fear, more courage. Less isolation, more connection. Service dismantles the illusion that you're the center of the story, and it places you in the community where you belong, not above, not below, but alongside. It reminds you that your pain has purpose, your journey has value, and your voice has power when it's used to lift others. When you serve someone struggling, you often end up confronting your own wounds. When you help someone find direction, your own path becomes clearer. It's not about being the hero, it's about becoming human. Fully present, fully aware, fully alive. That's the irony of service. The more you give away, the more grounded you become. In the act of helping someone else rise, you often end up saving a part of yourself you didn't even know was broken. Not because you were trying to be saved, but because service forces you to see what really matters and who you really are when no one is watching. Conclusion of the speech, success is service, Zai, in the style of Gavin Newsom. So here we are, at the edge of a new kind of success. One that isn't defined by what you accumulate, but by what you activate in others. One that doesn't shout, "Look at me," but quietly asks, "Who did I lift today?" We've spent too long chasing success that evaporates the moment the spotlight dims. It's time to chase the kind that endures, the kind that breathes life into broken systems, broken dreams, and broken hearts. That kind of success is built through service. Service to your neighbor, service to your mission, service to the future. You don't need permission to serve. You don't need a title to lead. You don't need applause to make a difference. What you need is the courage to show up, the humility to listen, and the conviction to act. Because service is not an act of charity, it's an act of character. And in a world starved for meaning, that character becomes your loudest voice. So if you're wondering where to begin, start with the people, start with your street. Start with one moment of impact and let it ripple outward. Let your success be measured not by how far you've risen, but by how many others you've brought with you. That's how we lead. That's how we build. That's how we heal. And that, right there, is what real success looks like.